now that it is 6:33. So first things first, I guess welcome back. I hope everybody had a good 2-month break. Hope it was nice and relaxing. Um, so I guess the first thing that we're going to do today is the semester preview. And then we're going to do a survey from last semester that also will count as attendance. We'll briefly cover the mentorship program and the design build fly update. And then we'll go forward and do the class guide. And that should help everyone be successful in aero classes this semester and kind of give you a overview as what to do for future semesters. So that being said, just a brief thing is that special projects is still happening on Thursday at 6:30. We're going to continue our hovercraft build. So that's starting strong this week. Next Tuesday, we've got a Generation Orbit / Spaceworks speaker event with Dr. John Olds, who is also a MAE distinguished alumni, as well as the Hassan lecture series speaker from last year. So he is super cool, and we're really lucky to have him. The next week, we have no meeting since it's a wellness day, but the following Tuesday after that, we've got a speaker event with AIAA fellow and Planetary Protection Committee member, Dr. Robert Lindbergh, and then we'll go from there when it comes to the semester. So that's pretty much the rest of February. So here you go.
All right, so I just put a link in the chat, and also you can scan the QR code, but it's just a feedback form from like last semester. If you can remember that far back, that maybe will help us get a better idea of what we can improve on for this semester and like what speakers we bring in, because last semester was like our first fully online semester. So just trying to make the online AIAA experience as good as possible for the club. And it'll also be the attendance form for tonight.
I'll give you guys a brief second to scan that in if you haven't yet. All right. Up next.
Okay, and just another quick reminder about the mentorship program. This is something that we started at, I think in like October last fall, but if you haven't had a chance to sign up to be a mentor or mentee, you can follow that either Linktree link or the QR code and sign up to be a mentor or mentee if you're interested in that. For anybody that's already in the program, your mentor should be emailing you to get things started up for this semester. And if they aren't, you can just send them a reminder or something. But that's the update there.
Sounds good. Christian. I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
You're good.
So yeah, DBF. So good news and bad news. So the really good news is we finished 18th overall on our proposal, which is pretty good for us. I mean, I think that's the highest we've ever performed. So that qualified us for the competition. And so we were making arrangements to go out to Arizona for the fly-off, but unfortunately that has been moved to a virtual event. We learned that just in the past week. So we're still going to learn more information about what the virtual fly-off competition is going to be like, but we're basically finishing up the construction of our plane this week and plan on doing a test flight this weekend. So we're basically wrapping up with a lot of the project. We still have a lot of work we still have to do, but I mean, most of the work is behind us. So we still have to do our design report that we're going to submit, and that's going to be a huge portion of our score for the competition. So we need to do a really good job on that. And we have to finish up some of our testing and most importantly, our flight tests. So fun stuff going on with DBF. We're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to get everyone involved since a lot of what we're doing now is in person, and we're kind of limited on the number of people we can bring in, like into the lab and such. So we'll be sending out more information as we go along.
So this time we're going to be doing things a little bit differently on how people can participate. So it'll be a little bit more active. Last time we did, you can use the reactions, but instead we're going to be doing a poll through Zoom. It should pop up on your screen. Take a few seconds to answer. It's just 3 choices, and it's not very hard, but that is how we will be doing things. So first up, class. It is probably one of the more important ones, calculus, all 3, and then applied differential equations. So if we can launch that poll.
I'm pretty sure everybody's answered.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
There's small amount of people in this class. The biggest thing for them is learn them well. They are going to be your foundation for everything you do from here on out. They will try and pull stunts with rare examples for each class. They'll pull it out of nowhere. So try and be careful and prepare as best as possible, but don't be too worried about it. But yeah, that's about all I can think of. If anyone else has any thoughts, comments, or concerns, then speak now or forever hold your peace.
All right, we'll move to the next one. What's this? Nice.
Nice.
Well, I guess we can skip this one if we've all taken it.
I was using it about 5 minutes ago, right before this meeting.
Nope. All right. Let's go to the next one. Woohoo!
Should have elevator music or something.
Yeah.
I didn't think this through.
Jeopardy music, at least. Nice. So we've all experienced Anna Howard.
Yep. It's a
in
good
Barnes.
All right, let's go to arrow 1.
So the weather stinks this week. Is
That's great elevator music.
dreary.
It is. Hey, maybe some snow on Thursday though.
Well,
One
maybe
can
we'll get class
dream.
canceled. Just kidding, we're all online. We'll never experience a snow day again.
I know.
What's the results for arrow 1 here?
Looks like we are half and half.
Ooh. Okay. So a question for the people that are in there is Hong still teaching?
Yeah, he's teaching it.
Nice, nice. How's that going so far?
Um,
I barely hear his recorded lectures.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Super
Yeah.
quiet. But
I have to turn my volume way up, but I'm really thankful that I can rewind and make sure I got what he said.
That's
he's
fair.
like
I remember
trying
when
to do classes in person. Like some people are showing up to his lecture, and I'm not sure if that's like legal.
Yeah, I went to the one on Monday, and there was like, I think he's supposed to have like 10 people, and there was like 8 or 9 people in there. Because like people, he like tried to split it up by day, so half people will come on Monday, half will come on Wednesday, but everyone from Wednesday like came on Monday again, which is kind of weird.
That's
I
interesting.
didn't even know anyone in aerospace was allowed to do that.
You're theoretically, we're all online, but I guess he bent that. That's
Interesting.
okay.
Well, my biggest advice for you, just because I did something very, very dumb, it was either the second test or final, Remember your Cartesian coordinate system? I mixed up the X and Y coordinate system, and he made our second test count to like replace the first one. It ended up being like a 15-point swing on like a test or another one. It's like a 2% swing on my final grade. So don't be dumb like me. Keep up with your notes, keep studying, and rewind like Holly was talking about. Rewind and learn those lectures because there's a lot of calculus Cat 3 in there, and it gets confusing. So keep up with it. You'll be fine.
Use the textbook as a lifeline. That is one of the better textbooks you will ever get for any class. And I still have it and still use it.
A good one. And did those who have had Hong so far, did you guys still do things like the giraffe on the bottom right corner? No? Oh, man. Okay, never mind. On to the next one.
I'm just gonna assume that like the same people who said that they're in this one, or in Arrow 1 are in the lab. But yeah, so for Arrow Lab, how are they doing it? Do you guys get to go in, but just in like small groups, and be part of the experiment? Yeah.
They're having like 3 or 4 of us come in at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, so that like the actual going into the lab part is helpful to like ask questions about like how it's being set up and stuff, which is helpful when you write the report. But I think like the biggest advice is down there at the bottom, and that's to use Overleaf or another LaTeX program. But Overleaf is a pretty easy one to use, and then because you can just use like an AIAA template and put all of your stuff in there and not have to worry about any of the formatting or anything. It's kind of hard to get used to, but once you do, I think you'll be glad you did. But yeah, you should just expect to spend most of your time on MATLAB and writing the reports in there. It's a good practicing MATLAB class.
Best practice. All right, dynamics.
We'll put the poll back up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So still a couple people in there. Yeah, so dynamics is kind of like it's just another one of the mechanics classes like solids and statics, where you just kind of have to work on the problem solving process and just like how it's applied to dynamics. There's like certain parts of it that are reminiscent of physics 1, but obviously it goes quite a bit deeper from that. And there's not really too much advice here, but it really depends on the professor. I know for me, he was really receptive in office hours, and I guess that's like a typical advice for any class, but like take advantage of that and learn how to solve the problem rather than just like how to get an answer and like be able to think through it.
Definitely. And another thing is that all the dynamics things come back in spaceflight, which I did not know until this week. So keep that in mind.
Does anyone have any questions about this class or anything like that?
All right, we'll move on to the next one. Solids.
Yeah, I could use it. So solid mechanics is quite literally statics 2. You will be using everything from the later half of statics in this course. It can get pretty intense sometimes, so make sure you know the beginning material well. Moments of inertia and stuff like that. Just the concepts and basics of how you find those are super critical to really just understanding the later concepts.
Mhm.
But are you guys still on? I'm on for this. Never mind. That's all I have for this slide.
Yep. So I guess who all are most of you guys in Aero and Mechie? So this is a required class, so you'll definitely have to take it in the future. But it's a fun one, so don't worry about it.
Okay. So for those of you in this class, be prepared for the work and to go about it systematically. There will be a process to every problem that if you understand that, they become very simple. You'll use a lot of tables, graphs. Your units will be a guide for you because you'll be able to work through a problem and then have completely wrong units from what they're asking for and know you're wrong. So that's always super helpful. I don't know about Dr. Moore, but use whatever practice problems or anything like that that you get because you will see just about any type of problem come up in any way, shape, or form. This will be a class that you use later down the road. We're finding out that in Aero 2, you need thermo. So you think you might be able to write it off if you're an Aero student, but you will need it. So most of these classes you just have to learn so you can move forward. But
Brian, who was the teacher we had last semester? His name's escaping me right now.
We had Dr. Coda. He was a good one. If you're signing up for thermo, like for next fall, try to get Arun Coda. He's
awesome.
a great professor. Yeah. Just don't mess up on test one like Kyle and I did, which cost us in the end. But yeah, he's a good professor.
Nancy Moore is also a good one. She has a bad rap, but she's actually really good. Aero 2.
So Aero 2 is like they said, it's a lot of you're applying a lot of thermo concepts. So I would say you end up doing Aero 2 in a lot of ways is more related to thermo than it is to Aero 1. I think the class is super interesting. Some people hated it because it was a little bit difficult, but if you just put in the time and learn everything, like it's pretty interesting stuff. Like you're learning about shock waves and things like that, and we'll talk about the Aero 2 lab, and they go pretty hand in hand. That lab is pretty applicable. So I would say the best advice for it. So I'm guessing Venkat is still teaching it. Is he? Okay, so
Yeah, he is.
I would say the best advice. Well, I have a couple pieces of advice. So like, if you ever talk to him with his office hours, like you have to know that he will like make jokes and stuff, and you won't always know like if he's joking or being serious. That's at least how he was last year. Like he would like say things to me, like if I asked him like just a clear-cut question, and he would give me like an answer that was like a riddle, and then I have to like just figure out what he even meant. So that's one piece of advice is like just take what he says in office hours, like he might not be completely serious. And then also what I did that helped a lot is I would like watch I guess this depends on how people learn, but I would watch most of his lectures twice because he goes through a lot of new stuff, and it's not, I don't even know if it will necessarily go super quick, but you can kind of easily miss things that are really important. And also just make sure you take good notes. And then he provides a lot of practice problems, and I would just make sure you just understand those really well, because if you understand those, you're going to be fine in the class. But also when we took it, they made the exams like pretty difficult. I don't know how it will be with the online format, but the one exam we took, I know we took at least one exam in person last year, and it was super difficult, and a lot of people did really bad on it. But he ends up just, I think the entire class is basically just his exams and the extra credit he gives out. So he ends up curving everything in the end. So even if you do really bad on the exam, I mean, it doesn't feel good, but you're probably going to do like, more than likely you're going to do fine in the class as long as you just don't do like really, really terrible. So I would just say not to worry too much about that. I know that's not super encouraging, but I don't know. Just if you just do the work and stuff, you'll be fine.
I think the average on the first test was maybe in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah,
So
like it was super
pretty
bad.
rough. But like he said, it's curved.
Yeah, it's all curved, and he makes it intentionally really difficult.
Mhm.
So Aero 2 Lab, like I said, it's really I think it was my favorite lab I had the entire time I've been here. It's you do a lot of interesting things, and it's different in a lot of ways from Aero 1 Lab, but in a lot of ways it's similar. I mean, it's all set up the same where you do your experiment, you get your data, you do your MATLAB code, then you write your report. If they do the shockwave versus wedge angle, if you do the shockwave versus wedge angle um, lab where you have to like find the angle of the shockwave and all that stuff, that lab when we did it was like honestly insane. It took like just way too much time to do, and but it also turned out our data was pretty bad, and the method they gave us to like do it was pretty bad too. So if you do that lab and it's difficult, don't be discouraged because we've had to do it. We did it last year, and then I talked to the seniors that graduated last year, and they told me they did it that year too. And both years they did it. It was super difficult, but you can always ask people, seniors this year, for help or if, like any advice or anything on how to do it. But other than that one, it's really not that bad. That one lab in particular is just difficult. And he also gave us a bunch of extended time to do it. And basically, I think he ended up basically just giving us most of the code you need. And if you wrote the code yourself without using all the source code he gave, then you got like 30 points extra credit. So that was pretty nice. But it's a pretty cool lab.
Yeah, they actually changed how it's working this year.
Oh,
Because
really?
apparently they moved the supersonic wind tunnel off campus. So what they said they're going to do is just give us data sets and then have us use ANSYS Fluents to run CFD and compare the CFD with previous experimental data.
Yeah. Okay. Well, disregard everything I said. It might be just completely different than my experience.
That's okay. Oh, controls lab. All right. All right. So controls lab, the first two things that are on this slide definitely have to go with the in-person version, which I also did not have the pleasure of taking. So the two things that I would pretty much take out of it is that some take longer than others. So don't wait to the last minute. I had a really good TA where he was more than happy to answer questions, and they like did it every 2 weeks. So if you work ahead and you have your questions for the like office hours that happen in that middle week, it was definitely super helpful. And some of them were super easy too. So they generally give you a good way of like checking your work and that type of thing. It should be a pretty easy A class. And don't like it. The software you use might take some time to get used to. But to some degree, there's not too much overlap with actual controls and controls lab. So you kind of learn two different skills that way. I guess we kind of went in reverse order, but here's controls. All right. So, like the slide says, more so than anything, circuits are analogous to mechanical systems, and dampers or springs are like resistors and capacitors. So this is like one of the biggest things to remember. You'll have to remember like the individual components too. If you're in Buckner's class, that'll definitely be on a test, and it's in your notes, so it's pretty easy. It's just kind of a flashcard type thing. And the two things on the bottom, these block diagrams, are incredibly important, especially the one on the right. So if you remember like error detector, error signal, feedback signal, you know, if the loop goes down underneath the thing, like H2 or H1 in the picture on the left, then you know it's feedback. So if you memorize the actual titles for things and how it works, you'll be able to apply it to any system. Especially like the one on the left is a very fun interlooping one. And then these two pictures are also pretty familiar, if not, they might be in Simulink, they might not be, but familiarize yourself with MATLAB Simulink. That will come up in most people's final project. And I know at least Dr. Buckner does a lot of examples in class with Simulink, and make sure you pay attention to those and don't just kind of, you know, tune them out. I did that a few times and it was not a good idea. So it's not too bad. Honestly, the whole semester just kind of builds on itself. So as long as you remember the basics, you'll do pretty fine in the class. Like that. Yeah, let's do the poll on this one first. Fantastic. Okay. We like FlightStab. So I take it Dr. Bryant is still teaching this. Okay. So I very much enjoyed this class. As you guys know, he has like the guided notes, whether it's for just the lecture or he sends you an entire PDF. So one of the things I did and would strongly recommend is printing them at FedEx or Staples and getting them spiral bound. That way you don't have to kind of keep up with a bunch of pieces of paper, or if you have like a tablet, that works just as well. Know your concepts, not just the formulas. There's, as you guys already know, I'm sure there's a ton of subscripts of everything, and it changes all the time. So if you guys like don't just look through the notes and look for the formula that has that subscript, you kind of have to like work back to how they got the formula, because in future problems and projects, they'll definitely kind of build upon each other, and you need to know how to use you know, everything that you're given. Be ready for projects and quizzes. I think we had 3 projects and 2 of them were like part A, part B type things. I think part A was one and then B and C was another. And then we had to build a glider like the one on the right. And the quizzes he likes doing, but I don't know if he's doing it the same this year, but he typically like gives quizzes, but then he gives you the answer and then he has you turn it in. So they're not really quizzes. He just kind of wants you to think about it and then he'll teach you it at the time, because he probably knows that less people will go back and learn it for themselves after class. Another thing just to kind of note, just kind of take some time thinking through how the plane moves in problems, because like they'll do certain things, like you're in flight and you have an engine that's gone out and you have 2 vertical tails. How would you stabilize the plane at this time? And it's like, oh crap. And you have to kind of think through it. And I remember struggling with like that question for a while, and it ended up popping back up either on the final or the second or third test, if there were 3 tests. But the tests aren't too bad. You just kind of have to keep the time in mind with those. And it all comes down to knowing the concepts, not the formulas. The other thing is just watch Top Gun. If you need an excuse to watch Top Gun, here's one. It's very cool to go through it and try to understand what everything is. Yes to Kyle's Top Gun 2. Fingers crossed. We'll see how that goes. I guess,
Doesn't Tom Cruise return in that?
yeah, he's the instructor.
Yeah, they've already delayed it twice though. It was supposed to come out this past summer and then Christmas. So
I know, very sad. I think
Well-
Miles Shell is in that too, isn't he?
I don't know.
I think he's like new
yeah.
Maverick.
He is.
Yeah. Very, very good show, movie. I guess, does anyone have any questions on this before I go forward?
What do you do for your final project since it was online?
That was weird. I honestly,
Because that's the glider, right?
yeah, and we still had to do that. He pretty much said, like, he normally, I guess, would give you materials instead of assuming that everybody has them or everyone can go out and buy them. So he pretty much said, okay, if you guys don't have materials, just come up with anything you can think of with any like household items. I was paired up with Spencer and Hannah, two ARC geniuses. So they were able to, they were still in Raleigh and still built the plane like an actual glider using wood and everything else. So that's what we ended up doing. But, and that still required like a actual flight video and everything else. And so, especially since that was the spring and most people seem to have gone home during that time, it was definitely kind of different. So I'm definitely, I don't know if he'll do the same thing this year or if he'll come up with something else. But I think our project kind of got delayed too, just in the chaos of like having another spring break and everything else. But I hope it's the similar type of thing. It was pretty neat.
We're doing the same project. We're probably going to have to build it in some way. I think
Yeah.
I think he mentioned he might try and do that again,
Yeah.
Okay.
but we'll have to wait
Interesting.
and see.
Yeah. I think you could have groups of 3, I think, on that one too. Maybe 4. So it was definitely a group project. And that was a good thing. All right. Spaceflight.
Oh yeah, so spaceflight. See what people are in it. I know most of you are in flight sab with me, so I know Chris, you're taking it, right?
Yeah, I just can't answer the poll, but I'm there
yeah.
in spirit.
Yeah, so spaceflight's a pretty cool class. I mean, if you like space, it's interesting. It's just all about orbital mechanics. I mean, it's just you start out, you go over like it's very physics heavy and a lot of it says vector math. You go through a lot of vector math at first, but then after you go through and do tons of derivations, which is like the beginning of the class, and it's like fairly boring. But then you come out on the other side and you have like all your orbital mechanics equations, and you can like do a lot of cool stuff with it. So I put here like this was part of my presentation I had to do in the class, and it was just like orbital mechanics of the Apollo 11 flight, and so that was pretty cool to like learn about. So I don't know if they're doing it this year, but actually, yeah, they definitely are. You have to do like a special or you have to do like a space history presentation, and so like the class is split up where you have lectures where people are just like talking about space history, like going all the way through like basically all of like 20th century up into like 21st century space history. Well, I guess that's all space history, but just everyone does like a different presentation and stuff. That's pretty interesting to learn all of that because you have to go in pretty good detail. And then like doing the research for your own presentation is pretty fun. The biggest thing for the class, I wouldn't say it's like insanely difficult. I don't think anyone that's taken it would say that. But just make sure you have the textbook for it because I know the homework questions are pulled straight from it. And I don't even know if he like gives you the actual question. He'll just say, this is question 2.1 in the textbook. So you definitely need it. But then also the textbook like derives like literally what Mazzolini does is like he reads the textbook and then he like takes his notes from the textbook and then he like recopies those notes in the class. So you could like learn the whole class basically from the textbook and you're doing kind of the same thing as him, except for he goes through some more detailed stuff. But you have all the equations and everything you need in there. And most of the class is just knowing all those equations and knowing when to use them. So it's I would say it's most difficult at the beginning when you're doing all the derivations. But it gets
the
better.
beginning is definitely boring. He does like the same questions 60 times, as Andrew
it's
probably
boring.
knows
He's
too.
like, yeah. He's like just doing all these like derivations of dynamics and like vector math and stuff. It's like, oh my God. When is this gonna end?
Yeah. All right. Oh, structures 2. We'll do the poll on this one. Ooh. All right. So we've got some in it, some who will take it potentially. So I guess overall, I know the professor has changed 3 times in the last 3 years. So I don't know what Dr. Grace is going to do this time, but I had Dr. Peters. She is amazing. So essentially it's really just an aerospace composites course. They actually just had to call it structures 2 because according to like ABET accreditation or something, that's what they had to call it. They couldn't call it composites without it being a grad class or something like that. So they just kind of threw it in there. Previously, I know I think it was Dr. Pankow who taught it before Dr. Peters. It was super project based, which is why ANSYS is in here. My year, we did not have to do anything with ANSYS, but we did do a ton of matrices, which is on the bottom. So it was pretty much just a continuation of structures 1, which is a required class for everyone. Aerospace structures 2 is not. You could take structures 2 or FEA or both. That's also an option. And yeah, it's pretty much just matrices and MATLAB. It's not too bad at all. It's kind of interesting. I know Dr. Peters focused on like the applied composites. So like, where do you find composites in nature and like the Spirit Aerosystems plant. She focused a lot on that. We were supposed to have a speaker from that, but that was also the first COVID semester, so things got a little changed. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting, pretty fun class. Honestly, you might not even have to be interested in composites to take it because overall it's just kind of interesting in general. It's not super boring or anything like that. So yeah.
Is that the FEA for a fidget spinner?
Yes, that was Paul. They made
I thought he did like a. I
Oh,
thought he
it
did
was
that
Paul.
to like. I thought he made like bumpers.
for a
On a
drone. You're right. You're right.
That
I always think of it as a fidget spinner though.
it does look like a
It
fidget
was
spinner.
an
It's the
indestructible
indestructible
drone.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Where's that video?
Oh,
Does anyone know?
a good
YouTube
one.
maybe? I don't know.
That was another funny video from Paul.
All right, we'll go into CFD. So my giraffe has returned. This time it's been converted into a oh now I'm blanking on it, a mesh. Yeah. I don't know if they're offering it this year. That's the question.
I think it was offered back in the fall. This semester is, I think Dr. G is applied aero class instead.
Yeah, well, typically it's taught by Dr. Edwards, and I know he normally teaches it every 2 years, but I know he did teach it last semester, and he taught it a semester or like a year before that. So he might be down. I'll talk about it super briefly if we have people who might take it. Those who are in applied aero, I would recommend this one too, just because it's super interesting. It's super similar to Aero 1, the class structure of that. However, I guess since you guys did not have Edwards, it might be a little bit different, but the concepts are all the same. Since it is Edwards and he really likes CFD, ask questions to slow down class. He'll just keep going. And if you know Edwards, he writes all over the board in totally random ways. So you need to pay attention because otherwise you don't know what order things were written in. The other thing to note is that it's called computational fluid dynamic, or well, actually it's not. CFD is computational fluid dynamics, but the class itself is called computational methods in aerospace. Everybody calls it CFD, but you don't actually use that much CFD in it. You learn the concepts behind CFD. So the math and the MATLAB behind that. Like it says, brush up on MATLAB coding skills, know how to find bugs and loops. There's a lot of loops. It's kind of like vibrations in that sense. You use Runge-Kutta. I know. You use Runge-Kutta. There's another one called Lax-Wendroff scheme. There's a few others like that, but he teaches it pretty well. And once you get the hang of it, it's actually really, really interesting. Like it says, give a good effort and you'll do great. Edwards likes teaching this stuff. It is difficult, but he's happy to like answer questions. And when you like if you're paying attention, you're asking questions, you're talking to him. It's a pretty small class, so he kind of knows who everybody is in general anyways. So like it says, like since he likes it and he's not really there for grading it, it's really just like, how much did you do and how much can you tell me, like if you didn't get this, why not, or things like that. So it's really not too bad. Grade wise, I don't think we had a test because of the way COVID ended up working out. But we did have a final project, which was chaos. I know I and 5 other people stayed up until 6 a.m. one night trying to do that after the flight stab final. So it was a really nice time, but it was actually super, super interesting. It was just really difficult and it wasn't assigned in enough time. So I still got my giraffe in, and that was kind of, he ended up just making it something like that rather than putting that mesh into Capstone, which is the CFD solver by the DoD. So just super interesting for those who might want to take it next year.
Oh man, so senior design. So
What excitement.
I'm trying to think of even what to say. So I'm so I recognize I'm very biased because I'm doing the DBF senior design, but also I want to give like good advice because I think there's people that did senior design this year that didn't like know what it was like going into it. So I'll just say, whatever you want to do, just make sure. So let me first say, there's several options for senior design. So you can do the NASA student launch. So that's like working with some of the people from like high powered rocketry. Aren't they the ones that run that? And then you have DBF, which is what me and Carissa are doing. So that's a fixed wing plane. There's other fixed wing plane groups that aren't associated with DBF. So this year there's 3 other teams doing the fixed wing plane. And then there's also the teams doing the drone. I don't exactly know what the drone is doing this year, but they built a drone. And then there's the team doing the CubeSat. So if you're interested in any of those, I would highly recommend finding someone that did it last year or did it sometime in the past and just talking to them about their experience with it before you do it. Because like I said, there's people doing it this year that like I don't think had the right expectations of what their project was going to be. So like for instance, like the CubeSat is like I don't know that much about it, but it seems like extremely chaotic, and I think it's been chaotic every single year they've done it. So like I talked to someone that did it, and they're like, I was like, "What are you making out of?" And they're like, "Oh, we're making out of wood." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we can't use any. They're not letting us use any space grade materials." And I'm like, "What are you even doing?" And so like I don't even know what's going on with that project. Of course, I'm gonna say do DBF if you're interested in all, do DBF. DBF is like probably that and the student launch are probably like the 2 best projects to do if you're able to do them. DBF this year is pretty cool. We had a lot of like really like a lot of people that are very invested in it from like they're involved in it this year. And it's been pretty fun. But senior design, the class itself is a lot of writing. So last semester, I'm sure everyone that's like came to the DBF meeting stuff know, like we had to write so many documents. It was honestly insane. Our final document for the class was like 150 pages. It was just a lot of work that went into it. But it is rewarding though, and it's very it's applicable to like what you will do in the future. Trying
Another
to think what else.
thing, I guess, to add is that we'll definitely for DBF this year we'll go through and do kind of more of a thing that we can answer questions in the future, just to kind of give you guys an update or a idea of what to expect. But I guess in summary of what Christian said, it's this one in particular is 481, so it's the continuation of last semester. But it's definitely something to look forward to, but they're definitely just kind of working out some kinks at the moment. So things are going to change in the next few years. I know it's a lot better from last year, so we are very happy for that.
Yeah, and I think next year will be better than next year 100% is gonna be better than this year, because hopefully you guys are gonna be virtual still. And then also like that we gave them a lot of feedback this year about things that just didn't work. So I think it will improve in some ways. But yeah, it is kind of like the whole senior design here is kind of a work in progress, but it doesn't mean it's not fun. I mean, it was just kind of stressful this year with COVID and everything, but it, like Chris has said, it's definitely something to look forward to, and it's cool to be able to like work on a project for 2 full semesters and see everything come to fruition.
Another super brief thing before I move on. As one of the things that a lot of people have complained about / mentioned this semester, if you guys can get any hands-on experience with anything before senior design, DBF, special projects, ARC, rocketry, liquid rocketry, anything, it will be super helpful, because those who have not done that are really struggling, and they're upset because they don't know how to do it. But it's just something that you have to learn outside of class, and it's something that you can learn outside of class. So for example, Christian learned about all of propulsion for RC aircraft, which neither of us knew nothing about. So you can definitely do it, not, in class. And it's just something that could be super helpful going forward, before you get to senior design, just because it helps your team and it helps stress levels as you go. But let's go to special topics.
Yeah, so special topics, is there anyone taking a special topics class now?
There's
Yeah,
a
I'm
few
taking applied arrow.
applied arrow.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. All of you are taking applied arrow. So I don't know much about applied arrow. I've taken 2 special topics classes. Both of them I've taken are super interesting. I took the space exploration systems class, and then I'm taking the space environments class with Dr. Berg right now. Space exploration systems, they'll probably offer it again next year. It's like, if you like orbital mechanics, it's basically a continuation of that, and you go into a lot of the information is repeated from that, but then you get to go into more detail with things, and it's pretty interesting. And then you do a lot of like group projects and stuff, or group presentation stuff again. That's fun. I don't know that much about space environments right now because I'm just now taking it. But the special topics classes are pretty cool. Like they're pretty interesting. You can take them in things that like just stuff that you wouldn't get to like learn about from other classes. And from the ones I've taken, they're like not really the most difficult classes either. So they're kind of nice to have to like balance out your schedule, especially senior year for me. Like, because like I learned stuff in them, and I didn't just like mess around with them, but like it wasn't like the most difficult class I had to take, and it wasn't the most time consuming thing, but I still got to learn stuff that I wouldn't have otherwise. But I don't know anything about applied arrow if you guys want to tell them about that.
Yeah, so I guess super briefly, not super specific to applied arrow, but more as overall, it's a really good opportunity to take classes with the professors you really liked sophomore and junior year, but can no longer take. Hence applied arrow with Dr. D. So that is definitely a really neat opportunity just to kind of have them again. And it's a really like kind of just fun class to take. I think, no, never mind. VSTOL is not one of them. But they change all the time. So if you're like, if you want to take it and you don't know if they're going to have it again and you really want to take it, because they might not have it for another few years or until enough people ask about it. So it's definitely something I think most of us would recommend taking. I guess super briefly, research. You can do your university research in for course credit, or you can get paid for it, which does not count as research. And yeah, a good way of doing this is just to kind of meet the teachers that you have in class and see what they do for research, whether they talk about it or you ask. But it's just another way to get another credit, especially if you need one. It can be super helpful. And I guess we're 7 minutes early, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute, camera, chat, anything. If not, we'll all be here afterwards as well. So